Yes, welcome everyone. This is my presentation of curl 8.14.1 that we released today, and I just want to highlight some of the stuff that we did in this release. So yes, I did this release photo out in my garden the other day when it was nice and sunny. So I am Daniel Stenberg. I work for WolfSSL. I am the lead developer of curl. I want to talk to you today about release 268 that we did today. And since this is a patch release, I did a video just last week, right? So in this time around, the team curl that actually helped out was then slightly smaller than in a regular release, but we still managed to get help from 20 contributors, and we got code merged into the Git repository from 9 different authors, one new actually. So lots of people helped out, even though we only had a week this time to actually produce this release. And of course, we did this patch release in just 1 week because we, of course, accidentally did some silly regressions in the .0 release last week that we considered they were annoying and bad enough for us to do a follow-up release so that people can get something slightly better as the latest version. So yes, it took us 7 days, and now we're up to 9,938 since we did the first curl release, approaching 10,000 days. And the numbers then are the same as the previous release. This is a patch release. We didn't do any new features or changes. So we have 269 command line options, 96 libcurl functions, and 308 curl easy setup options, the same amount of numbers, or the same numbers as in the previous release. Large numbers. And funnily, or maybe I don't know, enough, we have a security advisory. We had a week, but we still managed to get a new security report, and we wrote up an advisory. We have a CVE, and we told everyone about it today. And this is what it is about. We call it CVE 2025-5399, severity low, reported by this hacker called Z2 underscore. It's a fun name, but that's the name they go by. So anyway, it's a silly bug that makes curl get trapped into a infinite or endless loop when it gets some fun WebSocket data. So in case you have an application that speak WebSocket with a site and you happen to connect to a malicious site, it could actually then, willingly and maliciously causes minor denial of service on the application because it could then get curl into this endless loop. And it's actually busy loops. It would just sit there spending 100% CPU forever until you kill the thread or process. Super annoying. We deem it severity low, and the Z2 underscore will get a reward from the bug bounty. So thanks for that. And read up about it. You can actually mitigate against this by either you don't connect to a malicious site, or you set this. You can you can set the auto pong option on and off to slightly work around it. But anyway, it's a small patch, so patch it in case you're connecting to random WebSocket sites. So I just wanted to emphasize that here's the crossed over words here. So there are no changes in this release. I mean, as in no new things and no new features or anything. We just fix bugs, and we actually count about 35 bug fixes merged in these 7 days. And some of them that I just, collected, maybe the most noteworthy ones, or at least some that I decided I wanted to talk to you about is this list. So one memory leak in the threaded name resolver in case of an out of memory while doing the name resolve, and you actually have a HTTPS RR support enabled. Lots of ands and conditions, and this is already in an out of memory situation, so this should be rare for most users. anyway, fixed now. We've improved FTP a little bit when we take down a connection after a failed transfer, or at least we take it down better now. So a minor FTP thing. We did another minor HTTP thing. So when we do a HTTP transfer with some data and we need to redo that HTTP transfer, we need to rewind the input. So there's different mechanisms to do that. There's, for example, there's a callback that tells the application rewind. And if that rewind fails, we should fail that, or we now fail that a little bit earlier and better than we did previously. The perhaps most annoying regression, I think maybe the single reason why we're doing this patch release today is this. So there was this kind of silly regression in how we grow a particular array, or how we handle when we add a lot of transfers to a single multi-handle. You know, uh, libcurl has this API that you can add transfers to, and then we can do pretty much an unlimited number of parallel transfers using that API. It's a pretty fancy and convenient way to do many parallel transfers. And if you would add, I think, in the ballpark of 400 transfers to that multi API, it would go wrong. It would sort of not like it, it would crash, it would misbehave because of just a logic error in there. Fixed now, so now you can easily do 400 or 1,000 transfers in parallel if you're inclined to do that. We fixed sending early data with wolfSSL as a TLS backend, just another tiny mistake. Should work fine now. Right, I think that is the WebSocket fix for that CVE. Right, so it's about when we end up in a blocked send situation, it could the loop would basically say if we're 0 or larger, continue, and it would always stick to 0, so it would just loop and loop and loop. And we did merge another set of WebSocket fixes and a bunch of new tests actually. So a lot of smaller fringe cases around WebSockets have been improved now. So WebSocket took a big, well, a step forward at least in this release. So bunch of tiny lib fixes, and then we did some other tiny things. I mean, it was only a week, right? So it wasn't that long time to do a lot. But we fixed a problem when uploading with the period. So we have this strange syntax. For example, you can do an HTTP put from standard in a sort of non-blocking fashion, -T period. Anyway, we had a regression where that stopped working, so it works again now. We also made it, or actually, so we now prevent this weird option combination. So you could previously try to use --no any auth, but it wouldn't do anything. And really, what would it do? So it's not documented to actually work, and it didn't do anything. But now, if you try to do this, curl will say, beep, it's an error, can't do this, because any auth is not accepting this --no prefix. Yeah, and I refactored the option parsing thing in for the curl command line tool. The primary reason there was to actually make it less complicated, so to sort of just make it easier to understand and read and handle. And while in the process of doing that, I also discovered that we had multiple minor problems. For example, we did not support --no properly for 6 or 7 different options that basically no one ever really noticed, but now we do. And similarly, in this week, we also realized that the -N option didn't work. This is a regression. I don't actually know when it stopped working. It was a while ago. I went back a couple of releases to see if it worked then, and it didn't. So a number of releases ago, we accidentally broke the -N option. This is a short version of the no buffer option. The long version, basically, it prevents buffering of standard out. So basically when you use this, there was a no op instead of actually doing what it's supposed to do. Now it works again. I fixed this test script we have for testing purposes called memanalyze. Is actually, so we have this custom memory logging tracing thing in curl that you can enable with the debug build, so that curl will then log pretty much all the memory operations it does, and then after the fact this script can then verify that all the memory operations are mapped, right? So it doesn't allocate more than it frees and stuff like that. So it basically makes sure that everything looks fine. And that script didn't work properly with get other info and free other info, even though it attempted to. And we basically just never tested this before. But I tested it this time around and found these problems. I fixed them, and now they work. Now we can test those better. We now check. This is a little bit of a weird thing, but basically when we run test cases, as we do, quite often, we have a bunch of test servers that we have written, just stupid servers for a number of different protocols, so that we can interact with those servers to verify that curl is acting correctly and speaks the protocols the way we think they should speak the protocols. And those test servers, they are often told to store the port number in a file. So because they're started on a random port number, and write the port number to a file, and when it's started, we read that file to figure out which port number the server is using, so that we can connect to the server correctly over TCP or whatever. And in a very loaded test situation, when we were running parallel tests, that port file could take a short time to get populated, and we could sometimes end up in a situation where we would check the port file before it was actually populated, and then the test case would fail because we wouldn't know which port number to use. Or even worse, sometimes we would use the previous port number from the previous test round or test case, and things, and it would fail tests. Basically, we would get flaky tests or red CI builds or whatever. Um, Without it actually being a problem. It was just this race condition in the test setup. So we fixed that. So ideally, hopefully, this will make our tests slightly more stable and the CI builds a little less flaky. And of course, as always, check out the full changelog on the curl site, always on this URL. It details all the bugs, most of the fixes, most of the bugs, with links to the original GitHub issue or pull requests, where you can figure out the entire history and discussion and links and commits and blah, blah, blah. And exactly as in the previous release presentation I did, we are going to, I just want to mention stuff that we're going to remove that are pending. This is June 2025, right? So it's June 4th today. So this is going to happen this month. Actually, after we open the feature window again, we will do this. We will remove support for bare SSL as secure transport as TLS backends in curl. They don't support TLS 1.3. Secure transport is deprecated by Apple. Bare SSL is not likely to go anywhere. So away they go. And then the following month, next month, we're going to remove support for MSH3, which is a HTTP3 library, which doesn't quite work in curl. No one is working on it. No one is going to be sad about us removing support. We're just going to be happy because it makes our lives slightly easier and simpler. Later this year, we remove support for the WinBuild build system. So if you're building curl on Windows, don't use the WinBuild system. Switch over to the CMake build system. And CMake can actually generate files for you to build with whatever else you want to build with. And then in November, we're going to remove support for building curl for Windows CE and building curl with Visual Studio 2008, which, as the name tells, is a really old build setup compiler. And, there shouldn't be that many users still stuck on that old version. We have kept the support for 2008 just because that seems to be pretty much the last one you can build properly. You can build Windows CE stuff with properly. But when we drop Windows CE, we also drop support for Visual Studio 2008 in November. And when it comes to all of these pending removals, all of these are sort of, it's we might change. If someone shouts loudly, screams loudly, or ruffle their feathers properly and maybe do something, we might change. But otherwise, this is what's going to happen. And I said this in the previous release presentation, and I'll say it again. The next release is likely to become 8.15.0 because, yes, we hope to do a .0 release because we have features we want to merge in the next release. And some of those features, some of the work that we have ongoing, most of these are already existing pull requests. So we want to see possibly already in the next version to see native CA support on Apple operating systems, meaning that you could set a switch to curl and make curl use the native CA store on iOS and iPadOS and iOS and macOS and all of those, even if you use the OpenSSL and Forks backend. That this is likely to be popular for users who have been using the secure transport backend for so long, and when we remove the secure transport, people might still want to use the native CA store on these Apple devices and Apple systems. We have alt service fallback going on. When curl selects an alternative service to connect to and that alternative doesn't work, it should fall back. It doesn't today. There's a work on that. There's this ongoing improvement for how to handle HTTP redirects, currently called location mode. Possibly we will rename the option. Maybe we should call it redirect. Maybe we should call it follow. Maybe we should blah, blah, blah. So there are some, mostly these bike shedding decisions to do or figure out exactly what should the name be, what exactly should the option do. The libcurl side is already merged, so all of these things can already be done. We just need to decide exactly how we want the tool to do and act and work. It's harder than it sounds, actually, but yeah, we need to make up our minds. So maybe we do this, maybe we do it this release cycle, or hopefully we'll do. I hope we will see some more work on HTTPS RR support. I don't think we have any pending PR for this right now, so we'll see what happens in this release cycle. It depends on what people are going to work on. HTTPS RR being this separate DNS entry with extra information about the host that we're connecting to, as in HTTP version and port number, and well, could even be alternative hosts to connect to. It's more of a modern way to do alt service and an alt service in DNS instead of in an HTTP header. So it's a cool thing. We have experimental support for it, but we need a little bit more code, a little bit more test, and by all means, please enable HTTPS RR support in your builds and try it out. And if you find problems, report them, because we're very curious how it works, and we want to make sure that it works correctly so that we at some point can remove the experimental label. And we have another PR pending for flushing the connection cache. Basically, when you're changing networks with you have an application, you use libcurl to connect to the world, you change the network so that you know that all the previous connections are more or less dead because they're using TCP, they're tied to IP addresses, and now you've switched network, you're no longer on those interface or IP addresses, so they're dead, or basically dead. Then you can tell curl to abandon all existing living connections, start new ones for new. Just makes your application slightly better when you use libcurl to do transfers. So the next release, planned to be 8.15.0, is meant to be shipped on July 16. And if you do the math now, of course, it's June 4 now, so July 16 is not 8 weeks away. It's actually about 6 weeks away now. So, typically we had the 8-week release cycle that this time around turned out to be a 7-week release cycle, but now we also made a patch release, so we sort of messed up the entire system this time around. So we had the release Wednesday last week and we have a patch Wednesday this week. So we're going to let things cool down. And it says 7 days, but I don't think it's 7 days. I don't remember exactly because yeah, I did 7 days. So we're going to let it cool down for another 7 days. So we're going to open the release window on Wednesday next week if everything is fine. And then we open a feature window, and it's only going to be open 10 days this time. Compared to the 21 days in a normal release cycle. And then we have a feature freeze, and then we have this 25 days of feature freeze only fixing bugs. And we do the release candidate 1 with the release candidate 2 and the release candidate 3 in the normal fashion. And then we do a release again on a Wednesday on July 16. That's the setup for the release cycle for this time. If you're ever curious, there's a Google Calendar that you can subscribe to with all these events scheduled on actual days, and I try to update that when we ever have to tweak this. Typically, we have the 8-week release cycle, on and on and on, but I tweak it to sort of to accommodate to things that happens in my life mostly. So this particular time, for example, I've had a vacation thing in the middle of my summer that is happening, and it was just uncomfortable to do a release then. That's why we tweak it 1 week. And then this patch release happened. So things like that. Otherwise, we try to keep it at an 8-week schedule so that we can set the dates ahead of time, a fair amount of time into the future so that we can, schedule that, and everyone should be able to depend on, well, not depend on, but basically think that that's roughly the release schedule into the future. Well, we do our best. So yeah, if you want commercial support or help with anything that is related to curl, we offer that as a commercial service under the Wolf SSL umbrella. That's the URL. You can go and figure out more about that. If you have any problems, bugs, issues in curl, head over to the GitHub issues page and submit them, because we want to know about them so that we can fix them. If we don't know about them, we might not fix them. If you have a security problem or suspect a security problem in curl, go to hackerone.com/curl and submit it to us. They are, of course, private and non-disclosed for as long as we discuss them and research them. So that's why we have this special site. There's also this bug bounty program, so you will get rewarded cash, or at least money, if we deem the security problem genuine and correct. And of course, someone asked, so this is the top sponsors of curl in June 2025, the same set as always. I just wanted to sort of highlight them. So IBB is mentioned on this slide, the Internet Bug Bounty. They are the ones that are sponsoring our bug bounty. They make the bug bounty possible. So every time we announce a security problem in curl and I announce that we're paying that person a reward for that security problem they reported, the IBB is the true heroes here, because they are the ones that are actually paying the money. We admin and set organize everything, and then IBB writes the check pretty much. Hacks is the original owner and runner of the curl project. Wolf SSL is my employer. Fastly hosts and takes care of the web for us. TeamViewer pays for CI services. GitHub sponsors us by giving us a lot of CI powers and other services on GitHub. Kiray handles our fancy Anycast DNS server setup for the curl.se domain. And Elastic is a top monetary sponsor. So this is really the top ones that are enabling us to do curl as fancy and as sort of good as we can today. So thank you for those good friends in the world. And that's what I wanted to say to you about this particular curl release, curl 8.14.1. Hopefully there won't be another patch release in this series. So I'm really hoping for the 8.15.0 to be the next. So until then, bye.